Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking a little bit more about ear stretching. Specifically, I want to talk about the difference between naturally stretchy, elastic, easy to work with lobes, and lobes that are naturally more tight, more difficult to stretch, and harder to work with. See, I say all the time here on my channel, but we don't have one-size-fits-all bodies. This means we don't all have the same anatomy to get the same piercings, we won't all have the same experiences healing, but it extends to other areas as well. We're not all going to have the same experience stretching. And I think it's really important to talk about this because you'll see people come online and say, well, I know all of my friends and they had such an easy time stretching and I'm having the hardest time possible, I don't understand. Or conversely, you'll see folks who are like, yeah, I was really nervous to stretch my ears. I heard all of these horror stories, but it was literally so easy. I don't know what people are talking about. And the thing is, everyone's experience with this is going to be super different, and a lot of these factors are outside of our control. They're genetic factors, they're natural factors within our skin and how our body heals and scars and our skin's elasticity. But a lot of these factors are within our control. They're things like how we're taking care of our body, how we're taking care of our ears, how we're choosing to stretch, if we're being patient. So there's some stuff that we can't control, and just kind of naturally and genetically, you may have an easier or a harder time stretching. But there's some stuff we can control, and we're going to talk about both of those things today to kind of paint a full picture of the difference between having loose, stretchy ears and tight, more difficult to stretch ears, and how that might change over the process of your stretching journey. To start, let's talk about some of the factors that are a little bit outside of our control, and a lot of those are going to be genetic factors. When we talk about the elasticity and the stretchiness of our skin, there's really two main components of our skin we're talking about. Elastin, which is a protein kind of shaped like a little rubber band. That's what gives our body's tissues its elasticity, especially in the skin. And collagen. We've all seen people talking about collagen for your skin. Take collagen supplements. Keep your skin healthy, bright, beautiful. These are two main factors when we're talking about skin elasticity that we want to consider. And a big portion of those is a genetic component. Some people just simply have stronger, better elastin and collagen and more of it, and others don't. This as a baseline is going to change how your skin looks on your entire body, but also how your skin reacts to the stretching process. Now, I'm not saying to run out and go buy collagen supplements and beauty supplements at your local drugstore. I've personally taken collagen supplements a bunch of times in my life and not really noticed a huge difference to my hair, skin, and nails, but I am not a doctor. However, our skin is a whole entire organ, and there's lots of moving parts that make it work and make it function. Collagen and elastin are two really important parts to focus on, but there's other things that help our skin stay healthy and bright, and one of the biggest is hydration. Staying really well hydrated is well documented to be amazing for your skin. It's great for your collagen, it's great for your elastin, and more than any over-the-counter supplement you can take or gummy you can eat, being super hydrated is definitely going to help your skin be healthier, be stretchier, and just kind of be easier to deal with. Well, yes, some people are just going to have this genetic component to stretching. Some people's elastin is just not as strong. They don't have as much of it. Their skin is not going to be as stretchy. Other people are going to have a ton of it. Their skin's going to be super stretchy and easy to stretch. Hydration is one thing we can control that really makes an impact on our skin, and I'll touch a little bit more on that later. But even if you are someone who's born with lots of elastin and lots of collagen and really great skin, that tends to dissipate as we get older. That does mean that folks who start stretching younger may have a little bit of an advantage on folks who start stretching at older ages. When we're younger, we have more of that elastin and collagen in our skin. Our skin may be a little bit more forgiving to stretch and have an easier time going up sizes. As we age and we lose some of that elasticity to our skin, we might notice our ability to stretch slowing down. We might need to take more time between stretches. We just may find that the process gets a little bit more difficult. That's a factor that's mostly determined by genetics. Some people just get lucky in that lottery with skin and ears that are going to stretch really great, and some people don't. Speaking of genetics, anatomy plays a really big role in the stretchiness of our lobes, as well as how easy our stretching process is going to be. See, there are two distinct markers when we look at lobes. There's attached lobes and unattached lobes. And I have found that unattached lobes tend to be much easier to stretch than attached lobes. Now that's not saying if you have attached lobes that you can't stretch your ears, or you can't even get up to big sizes. I have clients who started with attached lobes and were able to stretch all the way up to inch and even larger. However, when we see attached lobes, it's a little bit less lobe tissue to work with. Sometimes there's not that much lobe tissue at all. Sometimes the cartilage comes down really close to the earlobe. It can definitely be more limiting. Someone who's born with attached lobes is probably going to have to stretch a lot slower and going to have to be a lot more careful than the stretching process, as opposed to someone born with unattached lobes, especially really big, like just lots of room to work unattached lobes. Sometimes I look like an ear like this and I'm like, oh my god, you could stretch to like 2 inches so easily. You've got all this lobe to work with. So the genetic shape of our lobes can also really determine how our stretching process is going to be. There's also this huge spectrum of people that fall into an in-between category between the two. It's not quite fully this attached lobe, but it's not quite fully this unattached lobe. It's kind of a meld between the two. And all of these different lobe shapes and just the natural anatomy of your earlobe, how thick it is, how much tissue you have, all of that is going to be a factor in stretching and how easy or difficult your stretching process is. And that's a factor that you can't really control. Likewise, if you have autoimmune conditions, skin conditions, or certain medical conditions, that may affect stretching for you as well. And I've talked about that before on my page, talking about psoriasis and eczema and EDS. There's lots of different conditions that can affect our skin and can affect how we stretch. These are all things that kind of fall outside of our realm of control, and there's just not really too much we can do about it. However, there are a lot of things that affect the health and stretchiness of our skin that we can control, and considering these factors can really make the stretching process an easier or more difficult experience. I mentioned hydration earlier, and I'm circling back because I cannot stress it enough. Staying really well hydrated is so important for your skin, and it really will make a big difference to your stretching experience. And when I say staying well hydrated, I don't mean drinking a bunch of iced coffees and soda. We're talking about drinking a lot of water. It is to the point that for certain piercings, I actually talk about hydration during aftercare because I find it makes such a big difference in how those piercings heal and the client's healing experience. And ear stretching, even as a very long journey over the course of years, is definitely one of those things that's affected by hydration level. And this means that this is something that can change over time. If you're being really good and staying really well hydrated for a couple of months, you may notice that your ears are healthier, happier, easy to stretch. But if you end up really busy with work or really overwhelmed with final season, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not staying hydrated, you may find that your stretches during that time are more difficult, more uncomfortable, or taking longer to stretch. And the same goes for just taking general care of yourself and your body. Things like not getting enough sleep, not eating a nutritious enough diet, or being under excess amounts of stress can all also have a toll on our entire body, and that includes our skin. If you're not sleeping, not eating well, and you're super stressed out about things that are going on in your life, it's no wonder that you may find that your ears are not stretching as easily, they're taking longer and longer between sizes to be ready. They're staying a little grumpy or irritated. You're just not having the best experience with them. While your whole body isn't operating as well as it could. Your body's not getting enough nutrients. It's not getting enough rest. It's not getting enough hydration. And that's showing in a variety of different ways, from acne to back pains to feeling sleep deprived and tired when you're up and about, to being lethargic, to even, yes, your piercings and your stretched ears responding very differently. And it's something that we totally overlook and we often don't think about, but I look back at my ear stretching journey and think about how difficult some of my last sizes from about like 5/8 through to like 1.5 were. I had such an easy, pleasant, enjoyable stretching process, and I vividly remember 5/8 being like when my ears were just not having it, not doing well. That was also around the time that I had moved to Florida and started my 3rd apprenticeship, and I was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was super stressed out, super overwhelmed. It was not a healthy situation. I was also struggling really badly with my eating disorder. I was not eating well and taking care of my body. I was not getting the nutrients that I needed. I just wasn't living a healthy lifestyle. And my ears paid the price to that. I noticed how much harder it was. I oftentimes had to wait even longer between stretches, and they were definitely not as easy as they had been before. I chalked it up to it just being the fact that my lobes were getting so large, but I was still going by every 1 millimeter increment. I look back now and I realize so much of that was that I wasn't taking care of my body, and my ears were paying the price. We're talking about ears that are really stretchy versus ears that are really tight. We have to talk about scar tissue. This is kind of something that's within our realm of control, but also kind of not. For example, if you had your ears pierced with a gun when you were a little kid and you had a lot of problems with them when you were younger, they were always getting irritated, having problems, always swelling up, always having bad reactions to jewelry, you may have built up a bunch of scar tissue from when you were too young to really realize what was happening and going on, and that can impact your stretching process now. I talk about this in my video on large gauge lobe piercings. I'll link it up here if you want to watch it, but a really big reason why folks choose to jumpstart their stretching process with a larger initial piercing is because their lobe piercings from when they were young are poorly placed or have a ton of scarring, and they don't want to have to deal with that scar tissue stretching. Others don't mind, and they stretch up their first lobes they've had since they were a little kid, but that scar tissue can definitely slow down your process and just make your ears a little bit tighter. Now, scar tissue that we develop during the stretching process is something that we have a little bit of control over, and this is the part that nobody likes, but if you stretch too quickly, if you rush between sizes, if you use tapers, if you use tape, if you use weights, all of these are things that can cause micro tears, full tears, blowouts, and all of that results in scar tissue that makes your lobes much more difficult to stretch. This is why it's so important to be patient with stretching, to listen to your body, and to use safe stretching techniques, because once you've damaged your ear, once you've blown out, once you've torn, that's going to heal and become scar tissue that can impact your stretching process, and that is permanent. There is no magic pill or magic ointment or magic aftercare I can give you that will fix a blowout or a tear. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the genetic component, and that comes back into play too. Some people are genetically predisposed to minimal scarring that has a lot of lipids and a lot of collagen and is healthier. Some people are genetically predisposed to thick, dense, discolored, and hard to deal with scarring, and that will play a factor if you blow out or tear your ears. Some people get lucky and they blow out and tear and stretch incorrectly, but because they're genetically predisposed to scar tissue that's a little bit more elastic, their ear heals and they keep on going. However, some folks are not genetically predisposed to scar tissue that's elastic and easy to deal with. Some people make one mistake once stretching and it follows them for the rest of their life, and they have this really difficult scarring that prevents them from reaching a goal size, creates thin spots, or just creates problems for the stretching process. Everyone's body is different, and every time we get a scar is different. You may be genetically predisposed to one type of scarring over the other, but this one time, this one wound, this one injury, this one blowout might be when your body responds differently in how it heals the wound and doesn't heal things as well, and you have issues. I have a whole ear stretching playlist here on YouTube that goes over how to stretch safely, how to try and prevent tears and blowouts and things like this from happening to your ears, and I will link it here, and I'll link it in the comments down below. So if you're looking to stretch safely and correctly, definitely do your research and make sure you're not stretching with methods that can increase your risk of tearing and blowing out. And one last thing that I want to touch on is climate and seasons when it comes to the elasticity of our lobes. And this is definitely a factor that I think many folks don't take into consideration. And the climate and also the weather where we're at affects our skin massively. Many folks deal with dry, chapped, irritated skin in the winter, and folks who are in really hot climates might deal with oily, acne-prone skin in the summer months. This can have effect on your ears and your stretching. If you live somewhere where it's really cold and really dry during the winters, you may find that in winter it's really hard for you to stretch your ears and your ears feel really tight. Conversely, you may find that summer is like the best time for you to stretch your ears and your skin's really healthy and happy. Everyone's different, everybody responds to different climates differently, but that's something to keep in mind during your stretching journey, how the time of year and the climate where you're at may affect your ears. Now, all of this video to this point has been focused on stretching, but I do want to touch on another really important issue when it comes to stretched ears that is affected by this constantly changing elasticity of our lobes, and that's wearing double flare jewelry. We've already determined the elasticity of our ears is variable, and sometimes it's variable week to week and month to month based on the weather, how well we're taking care of our bodies, how well we're taking care of our skin, our health and our health conditions, and if they're flaring up or if they're behaving. There's so many different factors. But this also means that how our ears wear jewelry, even once we're at our goal size, might look differently time to time, and this is something that I don't see talked about enough. I'm at 38 millimeters, aka inch and a half. I've been at this size for, well over 5 or 6 years now, and my ears definitely vary in how they feel day to day. I'm someone where winter really dries out my skin and really makes my skin just not super happy. I have certain pairs of plugs that have very large flares that I just don't even try and wear during the winter time because it's too difficult to get it in my ears when they're not that elastic. Those pairs fit in super easily during the summertime and when my ears are more elastic and when my skin is healthier, but I know when to not push those flares in. Conversely, I have some plugs with pretty small flares, and those are perfect to wear on days when my ears are feeling tight. Days when my ears are really loose, those plugs will literally fall right out of my ear, especially when I go to talk on the phone without using my hand, or if I'm not careful with my face masks. I think a lot of times when we talk about ear stretching, we get fully tunnel visioned into the process of stretching, and I'm guilty of doing that myself too because there's so much to talk about when it comes to stretching our ears, but we kind of neglect talking about what happens once we're at our goal size and how all of these factors that affected our stretching process now affect our experience of wearing jewelry while we're at goal size. I wanted to mention double flare plugs in this because I get a lot of messages and get a lot of feedback from clients that they're not sure what double flare plugs to wear, or they buy a pair and they fit and they're perfect for months, and now all of a sudden the flares are too big and they can't fit them in their ear, or they're too loose and they're falling out. And this is because of the variable nature of our skin's elasticity. If you had a pair of double flare plugs that fit you perfectly for months and now your ears are really tight and they're not fitting, think about all of those factors. Have you been taking care of yourself? Have you been eating well? Have you been hydrating? What's the season right now? Is your skin dry or being affected by that? Do you have any medical conditions that could be flaring up? Have you had any medical procedures, or is there anything going on that could be affecting your body? Ears are variable, so just because we've reached our goal size, just because jewelry fits and is comfortable right now, that variability of elasticity does not magically become permanent once we reach our goal size. It's still something that's shifting. If I'm not responsible and care for my lobes and massage them and hydrate them and care for my body, a lot of my plugs won't fit comfortably, and I'll have this moment where I go, oh, I gotta start taking my vitamins again, taking care of my skin, eating a little bit healthier. I've kind of fallen off the wagon. Let's get back to it. And honestly, my lobes are a really good way for me to check in with my body, even now at my goal size, and realize when I'm not doing the best job of taking care of myself. There are so many factors that go into stretching our ears, and there's so much that we can do to keep our skin as healthy and as happy as possible. There's also a couple things that are just outside of our control, and these are all things that are going to affect our entire stretching process, from when we very first start stretching all the way up to when we've been at our goal size for years. I hope this video can help explain those different factors and help you feel more equipped and more in touch and in tune with your body as you're stretching, and even once you're at your goal size, to be able to check in with your ears, see how they're doing that day, week, month, and make sure you're doing the things you need to in your life and in your care for your ears to keep them healthy and happy, and stretching up if you're still stretching, or wearing the jewelry you want to still wear if you're at goal size. No doubt we'll be sitting down to talk more about ear stretching soon. This is the topic that I seem to never run out of things to discuss. Can't wait to sit down and chat with you about this more in the future. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye!